Hi everyone, welcome to the Go From Bad to Awesome webinar brought to you by OutSystems. So I have the pleasure of doing this webinar today with you guys to share a little bit of our practice and the methodologies that we use here in the UX and UI team. So stick around, we have candies in the end, so you'll see that we have some giveaways to share with you guys. But basically today we'll be talking about UX and how UX can change a little bit of the practices. So why UX? Why user experience in a company that builds basically stuff, basically a mobile rapid development platform? And why do we care about user experience? Why? Because it's good for business. Uh, the last few years have shown us that business to business and business to enterprise apps systems have more demanding clients, and mobile is everywhere. Okay, the experience that we have on a daily basis have now increased our demands and increased the standards that we need to accomplish for enterprise applications as well. So stuff like Uber, Airbnb, and Slack, they are all around. Okay, so these are all things that no one thought could become huge business, but now for a mix of convenience and user experience, they have become a really crowd top application. So we need to think about what made them successful, and basically was the experience that they provide to users. It was a matching between the needs, and the experience that they provided. Okay, and by the way, design is not user experience, but we'll get to that. So why is user experience so important? Basically, it helps save money as well. So the cost of fixing an error after developing a solution is 100 times more expensive than if you test it early with users. And on the other hand, if you are a developer, probably you know this already, but 50% of most development time is spent on rework of stuff that could be avoidable. So our agenda for today is going to be focused a little bit on giving you some guidelines on how UX could be useful in the enterprise environment. And then we will give you a little bit of a walkthrough on our process and how we deal with UX in our company. Right? So why is an awesome UX so critical, and the return of investment on user experience? How to go from a screen to an experience? And basically we will give you some hints on how to start small to win big, what an MVE is and what it does. We'll see what an MVE is later on in the slides. And why Lean UX? This is a good question. Why do we choose Lean UX amongst all the Lean practice or all the UX practice? So a little bit of how to, the key factors, what you gain by talking to users, and our process. So we will give you a nice walkthrough on how we run things here. And then we will try to give you a little bit of how to avoid the UX traps and go after the rainbow. Right? So why is an awesome user experience so critical? Let's see. So this is a classic, right? I think everyone has seen this picture uh, being in the last few weeks and the last few years, and everyone knows a little bit about it. So it tries to depict a little bit of how words can be misleading. So how the requirements, if they are only written, can provide a different image for different people. Okay? So if you are someone on the customer side, someone on the project management side, someone on the engineering team, or someone on the user experience side, and being the customer, you can have different takes on what the same user story and the same requirements really mean. So to avoid that, we need something else. We need to go a little bit further, and because requirements are really not enough. So you need business requirements, but please do not forget to cross them with the users. Do not forget that people are going to use your solution. The worst we can do is to build something blindly without knowing why and what, who from, or who for are we building the application to. Okay? So some metrics on why the software failed. Usually it's poor communication among customers, developers, and users, meaning that there's no common language that can bridge the gap in between those separate walls from customers to developers to users. Badly defined system requirements. It doesn't necessarily mean that the requirements are bad. What it means is that probably they are not crossed with the user needs and with the business needs, which means that we could have a serious gap there that no one thought about it and everyone is focused on developing the project. And if we don't run it through the people that are going to run the application on a daily basis, probably we are not going in the right direction, right? So don't forget one thing. When you're building something, adoption should be your key metric. But if nothing else, please be sure that what you are building is something that really meets the need. You'll have a purpose for those who will use it. Okay? So remember this when you are developing your next application. On the other hand, we have other points of failure, which is when people try to develop and try to deploy stuff in a big bang deployment way, which is you wait until the very end when everything is built and you only then you expose that solution to your key stakeholders and to your users. Sometimes you can do not such a good work because you can have reactions like, okay, so after all this time, this is it. Okay. Mm. And you see that the users are a little bit disappointed, the stakeholders as well, and probably that will relate into not getting extra work from that stakeholder or not more investments in that project in the next steps. Or you can have something like the standards and the expectations were not met. So you know that mobile is everywhere, and the experience that we have with our mobile devices, with our devices at home, tablets and laptops, we have access to every single application now in the business to consumer world. And our expectations is that nowadays in the business to enterprise and the business to business, we should have the same experience as we have in the business to consumer world. So expectations are on a high level, and sometimes you get these kind of comments like, I was expecting something great, man. Can you make it a little bit more like Slack? Okay? I think most of you guys will probably relate to this, right? In somewhere, sometime in the project, we all heard stuff like this, right? So people asking and requesting that we will develop something like a major business-to-consumer solution that they have seen somewhere, or even like Facebook. And last but not the least, it is expensive to rework. Okay? When we get to the final solution and we do a final deployment, and all of a sudden the user says, or the stakeholder comes to us and says, can we change this? Can we make it better? Can we make it a little bit different? And you start immediately to see that probably we should have done some work with that stakeholder and those users beforehand. So, and this is what we are going to talk a little bit about in this webinar. How can we prevent these kind of situations on where we are confronted with final decisions when we already have everything deployed? Okay? So we've all heard we need to impress, this needs to look great, and they already know what they want. And when I hear stuff like this, I have this reaction. I just lean on my head and say, oh my God. So, okay, so we need to impress. Can you translate that, please? What does that mean? So it needs to look right. What do you mean by look right? It's just the look and feel, it's the experience, functionality, what? Because I don't know if you guys are professionals at using a crystal ball, but I am not. So usually the biggest challenge for us is to go from requirements and user stories to the final look and feel and visual design of the application. So if you are not as skillful as I am not as well using the crystal ball, probably you have the same challenge, which is how can we go from the requirements to the user stories? And there's only one answer. It's to cross that information with people that are going to be using the application plus the stakeholders. Okay? This is one of our biggest challenges. And if you think about the time, the costs, and the quality of the impact of failing to address the end user needs, not meeting client goals, not having any visual specifications, and basically just getting a lot of frustration on the stakeholder and on the user side, you get people like this. You get people really, really frustrated and anxious and nervous about the solution saying, what the hell is this for? Okay? And if you want to avoid reactions like that, you have to do things a little bit different. Okay? But don't worry, don't give up. Don't give up just now. We're just at the beginning of the webinar. So I'm sure that you guys can do it. Okay? And we'll show you how with our last few years of experience, we have achieved this. We went from dealing with waterfall organizations, with teams that were not used to having UX or design involved, and how we slowly and step by step, block by block, we managed to build a relationship and to show the quality of the work that we could do so that UX could be a part of the process. So basically, how does UX help in these processes? Basically, by asking questions, by meeting the users, by making some sketches, and by interacting as much as we can with the users from the beginning of the process until the final development. And we'll show you how. Okay? So we can do this. So you can do this as well. And if you think that we are a little bit crazy, you'll see that there's a method to our madness. So it's not something that it's out there. So we'll start to show you how we can go from a screen to an experience and why is it so important to think about experiences. Okay? So when we are trying to think about a project, usually at the beginning, we have to look at the full scope of it. Okay, we want to have the oversight. We want to have the big picture of the project, and that scares a lot. That scares us, right? It's scary if you look at we have to deploy this massive system that does this and that and all the other stuff, and we start to breathe shortly and we start to get nervous and we say, oh man, how can we achieve this in this scope with this timeline? It's not going to be easy. But the best advice that we can give you is that don't worry about the oversight, don't worry about the big picture, and at least don't worry to do it in a single shot. Think about it as building blocks on top of other blocks. So if you slice a big problem into smaller slices, but slices that are meaningful, you are getting in the right path. So meaning that you are going to solve one issue after the other, after the other, after the other, and you're not concerned about solving every single possible issue that you have to. Okay? So you need to gain context from the stakeholders and understand what's the critical success factors for them are. Okay? This is key. If you understand what really makes them tick, what will make them feel that the process and the project is a success, you already know one of the points that you really need to touch when you are developing your solution, especially the first interactions that we'll make. And then understand the biggest pains from the user side and merging them with these critical success factors. When we can do this, when we can merge them, this is a really cool recipe for success. Okay? So, can you do this? Yes, you can. You just focus on one thing at a time, and you'll see that you can have the oversight information to give and to provide you context, but then you just drill down one bit at a time, and you'll see that navigation, the structure, and all the functionalities will come more easily. But as we said, there's a method to do this in the best way. So nowadays there's a lot of talk about MVPs, and everyone knows what an MVP is, right? More or less. I've seen people, even people doing webinars talking about a minimum viable, and the P stands for products, plan, something like that. So the MVP is minimum viable product. And to be honest, I'm not so keen in that expression. I prefer minimum viable experience. And why so? Because if I think about the experience, I remember to think about how users will see and will feel about what we are delivering. So when I see a lot of drawings, a lot of experiments, a lot of stuff done in the internet to showcase what an MVP is and what an MVA should be like, we have all seen the drawings that we have here at the bottom, right? With the wheels and with the cycles, with the small bicycles and then the motorcycle and then the car, or just the wheels and the axis, the chassis, and then the full car. And usually what we see online is that, okay, the last one, it's a good example of what an MVP should be look like, and the first one, it's not such a great example of an MVP. And I think we all can agree that this second one is not anything. So it's just something. You're just trying to, so someone asks you for a car and you're just showing them a wheel in your first sprint, people will not be impressed. But on the other hand, they will neither be impressed in the last one because they have asked for a car and probably in the requirements was something like, I need a four-wheel transport, preferably a car that will allow me to transport people inside in order to take them from point A to point B. Can you see that being achieved by this means of transportation? Probably not. Okay, it will probably can take people from point A to point B, but they are not a four-wheel transport. So this will provide a little bit of disappointment in terms of the user. So I don't think that this is going to be the best example possible. Okay, so if you have a look at the first drawing, this relates best to what an MVE should be like, right? So it's about the experience. If someone asks you for a four-wheel transportation means to take people from point A to point B, if in the first hand you show them not a complete car, not the full shiny Citroën that you see in the picture, but if you already show them something with an X and with four wheels, probably only drives in just a straight, so you are not able to turn, but still you have the experience of a car, which is it's a lot different than just having a wheel or just having a full bicycle, but you don't have the experience of the car. So in terms of FVA, what we have is that the last one and the second one are not good examples, but the first one is. Meaning that you have to think about what you are providing to the users and to the stakeholders. And you are showing and you are demoing them something that has to bear meaning. And this is really important. Okay? People engage when you show them that you have understood their requirements. And if you show them a wheel or you show them a bicycle and they've asked for a car, they will see that there's a big, big gap in between what they are getting as a first take and that will take you to go to the final take. Okay? So the way to impress users and to gain their confidence and to gain their trust and to gain their rapport is to provide the minimum viable experience. This translates in a very practical way in terms of if you have a set of user stories, try to get for the first sprint, for the initiation of your project, the ones that can easily together make a journey, even if it's a small one, even if it's just a login process and then it lands on the homepage. That's enough, right? But at least you are telling a story. You are giving them a full experience of how they engage with the system in a meaningful way from end to end, okay? Don't worry about doing a big foundation at the beginning if you don't deliver something that has meaning. Okay? So if you need to do some engine work, if you need to work a lot under the hood just to prepare that foundation to build a system, be very honest. Give perception of that to your key stakeholders and tell them that only in about 2 or 3 weeks they will get something. But we will see how you can give them that something without having to develop, without having to invest your code time into it. Okay? So MVE works on cycle, a very short cycle, where we start to sketch the idea to show and to try to iterate with users to show them, okay, so is this something that was like you were asking? Because, okay, in this I can provide you the experience of having a four-wheel transportation with something that could sit on and then you can drive. Okay, and then you interact that. You actually cross that with the real world and you see users using it for real and you actually notice, okay, without a hood this doesn't work because it's raining and they can get wet. So it's better for me to design a hood as well. And then in the next iteration, let's test that, and probably they will be more happy with that solution. So, but this is an ongoing cycle. Okay, it's a cycle that we have to manage very wisely because we just don't have the budget to do this over and over and over again. But it will provide you a little bit of more information, and you will gain more information about the users. Okay, so when we are talking about an MVA, we have to talk about a process, a method that allows you to iterate with users on a regular basis and then to define, to iterate, and to refine that idea until you get the final product. Right? For instance, if you think about solutions like WhatsApp, what makes WhatsApp different than all the other services that are out there that do, quite honestly, the same? If you think about it, probably WhatsApp was the first to market, and thus you recognize it more immediately than the others. But if WhatsApp didn't provide you the right experience for your needs, which is to communicate and to socially interact with other people, probably you wouldn't use WhatsApp nowadays. But 70% of people choose WhatsApp other than other applications. Why is that? Experience. Okay? It is the crossing in between the user needs and the experience that that application provides, that system provides. And this is our aim. So that's why we are going to let you know how we run this type of process. How can we achieve that? Because we don't have unlimited budget to do so. So Lean UX is usually used when we know that budget is a concern. And by the way, nowadays, it's not only because of budget, it's because of innovation. We know that as longer as we take to provide something or someone with a solution, we are getting into trouble because probably the market is a lot faster to react and we have already competitors doing something different, something more innovative. So we need to cope with that as well. So for some organizations, UX is still a new thing. So we need to do this as well as a way to do our own proof of concept that UX is something that probably could work in our organization. Okay? So if we manage to prove that, and you manage to do this in one of your projects, even if it's in early stages, you can probably show the results, and you'll see that you get an openness to UX. That's what happened here at OutSystems. We started bit by bit showing the impact that UX could have, and nowadays UX is part of our operations everywhere. Okay? So how does Lean UX work? Basically, if you guys are familiar with Lean, Lean means that we do things in a very short cycle, in a very contained time frame. And basically, usually Lean UX cycles last 5 days maximum, okay? And with deliverables. This is the biggest revolution. So after 5 days of engagement, we already have something to show to the client, which is really cool. Okay? So you pick a user story, and you allow to build a small minimum use case, but it has to have a user flow or user journey. Okay, I know it's hard to get yourself acquainted with all the trends and all the terms that nowadays change every other week. But if you do a journey, or you do a user flow that it's meaningful with those user stories, you can start to sketch some solutions. Right? And then from those sketches, you can refine them and you can test them with users. And by doing so, you are doing something that it's really smart because you are trying to fail fast. which means that you are exposing your ideas and your possible solutions early to market. And this implies that you are not going to be failing big at the end, but you will do it very cheaply, very fast at the beginning. And you'll probably get a better solution as well, because you'll get a lot of feedback from the users in the process and from the stakeholders as well. So if we don't want surprises at the end, we should do this process ongoing, and failing fast, failing cheap is a really nice solution. So we got to the same principles here at OutSystems when we kind of looked back at some engagements that we've done in the past, and we wanted to make our own process. We realized empirically that the 5 days worked for us as well, and after the 5 days, we did have some deliverables to show to the client. But we'll get back to that in the next slide. But there's a big one. So Google Ventures has probably one of the most cited lean UX process, which is the design sprint. And what they do in the design sprint is exactly this. They unpack, which means they release a couple of user stories that fill the journey, and they start to sketch, they start to brainstorm around it. They decide which direction they want to take from those sketches. They do a prototype, they test it, and they repeat the cycle. So you see, it is the same principle. So we are trying to try and fail fast every time so we can get more information out of the users, out of our target population. Okay? And when we do that, and when we achieve that, we are going to increment and to improve our product. But if you don't have the deep pockets that Google Venture has, and you cannot do it on a weekly basis, no worries. Okay? Again, this is nothing that will hurt you. So I'll just leave some links here so you guys can go after it afterwards, and you can see how Google Venture has built up the design sprint and how people are using this all around and all the materials they have. But let me share you our own practice. So for instance, how do we do UX at OutSystems? We use Lean UX. We use a 5-day cycle where we try to gather context, meet the users, and we usually, how we get clients, and usually clients are not very keen on letting us meet the users because, yeah, you know, it's not worth it. They will not have the right answers. It's hard. You probably won't understand the business. And it's all true, but if we manage to convince them that we need to just watch the users interact in their own environment with their own current system, just to see how they interact in their work environment, it's a really cool way for us to get and to tap into the users and to what they do on a daily basis. And sometimes, most of the times, if that happens, we are allowed to speak with the users and to ask some silly questions like, why do you go there? Why do you need that system? Why do you do that like this? How many times a day? And so on. Okay, so when we try to do this, we are trying to tap into the user needs in a very undercover way, but it's one of the best ways is to see them interact in their own environment, okay? Rather than taking them to a room filled with people that they probably don't know. That's not the best practice, okay? From those conversations, from those interviews, we are trying to get the pain points and their needs. Also, we'll get some other information, but I'll get back to you on that. So all about what shadow IT is and how people use shadow IT to cope with the gaps they see in the system, and usually systems that are a little bit dated. Okay, so after that we set up what we call a vision document that you guys see here on day 2. And basic vision document for us here at OutSystems is a big document that gathers the business goals, the personas, the user stories. If we have some initial wireframes, we put them there as well. But basically, it is the project in a nutshell, ready for anyone that has to go into that project. Should be able to read the vision document, to go through the vision document, and be able to start the project. Okay? So we do some wireframes, we test them with the users, we refine them a little bit, we iterate on top of it, and when we are keen and we are, okay, we have almost sure that we have a solution that we can finally do the final look and feel on top of it, then we go and we do high fidelity designs on top of it. So by day 5, what we are able to show not only to the team but to the stakeholders as well, it's not only the wireframes, which you'll see are the gray, black and white, ugly things, but that have all the functionality available, but we will have something that it's branded with the look and feel of that client, and that is a big plus. Okay? So, but this is all about the process, all about the method. Let's talk a little bit about what really is important for us to aim while we are running this process. So what are the checklists, what are the checkpoints that we need to cross when we are doing this? So to do this and to mirror a little bit of the elements of user experience of Just Carrot with our own Lean UX process at OutSystems, I've just pinpointing here what we do in day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5, and which means that we start by the user needs. See, very basic. So user needs, business goals, all here, and then from that we try to understand how they gather information, what type of information are they handling in their systems, how that information is structured by day 2, and day 3, day 4, it's the days that we are going to invest in trying to get the structure, the functionality side of it on wireframes. And only after we have all these 4 layers ready, we do the visual design. But you can see that by that time, we already have a lot of useful information for the development team. Right? You can check a little bit more about Just Carrot's elements of user experience in the link provided. And this gives you an idea of what are the steps, what are the milestones that we are going through from one step to the other, right? And another cool checklist, another cool thing that you can run, just to be sure that you are really on the right track, it's something like the 7 factors of influence that influence user experience by Peter Morvile. Usually you find it online as a honeycomb structure. To be honest, I'm more keen on this 360 view, because you can pick one of the values, you can pick just one of them, and you know that you have to run them all through. So if you start by assessing if that solution is usable, and then you go findable, credible, desirable, and you know that you have to end up here. You can begin anywhere, accessible, valuable, whatever you feel that it's most important for that, but you know that you have to go around. So by the time you finish, you are sure that you probably have something that is meaningful, and you know why it's meaningful for that user. So the big advantages of stuff like this, like the 7 factors and the elements, it's to provide you with a setting of like a checklist that you can run through as a sanity check. Okay? And for instance, here at OutSystems, we have a very important rule. It's always ask why. And these kind of tools that are available are some tools that provide you a little bit of guidance towards this. Ask why. Ask exactly what that solution that you have and that you are trying to develop, is it the best solution? Why is that the best solution? Is it because it's the most usable, the most findable, it's the most credible, and so on? Okay? Just be sure to use a reference point that you can cross. And it's very important, because when you get that funnel, that project funnel, that just drives you in a very fast pace towards meeting the goals, getting something done, just develop something to show them, we forget that we need to break sometimes. We need to stop, and then we need to assess if what we are doing is meaningful and it's the right thing to do. Okay? So the best recommendation that I can give you at this stage is test it again. Okay? As often as you can, test what you are trying to develop, because only with testing you are sure that you are developing something that people will understand what it is. Okay? If someone wants in the end of the presentation, I'll be more than happy to set up another presentation with some reference of stuff that it's available online, being elements of user experience, design principles, and stuff like this. But you'll see that we have some giveaways for you guys, so you have some tools and some guidance throughout the process. So we are really here to help you. So my best recommendation is to test, right? And why? Because you gain insights, you gain a lot of useful information, and most of all, you are surprised with the information that you get. Especially, you get the pain points, right? You have the shadow IT, and shadow IT is that those parallel systems that people use that are not official systems. So being spreadsheets that someone uses because the system doesn't do, I don't know, I know how to do my macros on my spreadsheets, and that's a lot better than using the system to just slim down information and just streamline what I need to do. It gives me what I need. So I just fish information from the system, I use it in my spreadsheet, and then I feed it back to the system. This is stuff that we only realize when we are going to meet the users and see how they do stuff on a daily basis. Okay? So you get a better understanding of who are you building the solution for. And this is key. If you know exactly who you are developing to, you know exactly what they will value. And that's key information for you to develop uh, with, with a lot of confidence. So user testing is something that probably most of you guys are really scared to do, because it means that we have to expose whatever we've done to other people. And especially it's a bit more scary when we are talking about the users, because the concern is, are they going to be impressed by what they've seen, or are they going to be disappointed, and then from then on the relationship is gone? Guys, think about this. If we are going to test it, we should frame it as such. Right? And if people understand that this is an ongoing process and this is not a final solution, and we are trying to get to the next level and we are trying to hear their voices, this is really important, you can earn some points with the users, and you can even get some people to get to be evangelists during the process, which is if we are aiming to change a system, if we engage people from the beginning, even if it's a small group of people, you will get some people that will act as your liaisons within the company, as your leading evangelists, okay? And they will facilitate your relationship with the company as well, because they will probably provide you information that otherwise would be impossible. So we all have this reaction when we first do some user testing, okay? We also, oh man, why is he not clicking the right button? Why, please? It's so obvious. You should see it. We all have this frustration, right? But what we learn is that probably it's not that obvious. If it was obvious, people would click on it. So it's a learning process for us as well. So Steve Krug did a very cool job of piecing up the rocket surgery made easy, which is something that we advise you guys to read. And then you'll see that it's really not the rocket surgery. It's just something that if you do it right, it's really important, it's really meaningful, and you get a lot of information. And you can act on top of that information. So it's not that hard. What is hard is when you let people drive their own car without any further instructions, meaning that if we only have the development team taking care of all the requirements, all the improvements, everything, we are letting the inmates running the asylum, which means we are letting the people that are already committed and involved in the project doing the assessment of what they are doing is good or bad. Okay? It's not that people are not going to do a fair assessment, it's that they're just too committed with that. They are so involved that there is no way they can step a little bit out of that process, look into it with an unbiased eye, and see, probably we should turn left instead of right because that's the way to go. Okay? If we test it, we don't get reactions like this, guys trying to smash a laptop with a hammer because Windows doesn't work. Okay? And it is really important for us to think about is that the guys next to us in the other team could be one of our users, not to the full system, okay? But for small stuff that we want to release within the system, We call it hallway testing. So it's testing that you can do on a hallway because it's simple, it's easy, and someone without the context of the business and without the context of the client can do. Okay? So don't drive users insane. You are better than that. Okay? You're really better than that. Don't forget it. So by now you are equipped with some process, some tools. You already have this nice idea of how to use a test and how you should do it and why you should do it, most of all. So you're ready to take charge, right? Um, not that far, and we still have a lot to talk about. So be patient, Padwan. Be patient, young one. We are still at the beginning of all the solutions. So we are midway to the webinar, so stick around. There's still a lot to talk about. But especially, one of the things that we've seen, and it's the most popular conversation piece, is that we have all these processes, we have all these techniques and these tools, and we can give you all the tools and all the process we want, but every organization, every project, every team has their own way to cope with these kind of techniques. Okay? Some teams are more effective one way, some teams are more effective the other way. What I'm trying to say is that there's no right solution. As long as you piece up the things that are really important within this process and this methodology, you'll probably be heading the right way. But don't force yourselves to do the design sprints from Google Ventures just because it's Google and it's cool, or don't follow blindly our UX process of 5 days just because OutSystems is cool and we know what we're doing, because this works for us. And you see that there's some slight differences between our lean UX process and Google's lean UX process, because the drives and the goals are a bit different. So don't expect to have a hammer and everything is a nail, meaning that if you have the process, now you can solve all the problems the same way. Not quite. And you'll understand that project after project, that projects will be led a little bit different. So in some projects, you'll probably need to run a little bit more after the users. In some other projects, people will be more aware, and it will be more easy to have access to users, so it won't be such an hassle for you. Okay? So don't worry, we are there to help you, and there's a lot of stuff that you can use online, and there's a lot of resources available, but the most important thing is that you need to think and to find out what's your own way. So, every Jedi is different than the next one, so don't worry. So, and what about our process? Okay, we've just shown you our 5-day UX kind of engagement, but that doesn't say anything. At least it didn't provide you with the guidance that you really need to go after a project and you say, okay, now I feel comfortable. I know exactly which steps I need to take in order to nail this. And again, that's why we are here, to make your lives a lot easier. So how do we run Lean UX at OutSystems? So basically, we have a 6-step process, which is basically our framework. And I'm going to be focusing today only in the first four stages, because you had the last webinar was about the lifestyle guide, so this is already covered and nicely covered by Danielle. So you guys will be hearing me talk about the business analysis, the user research, the wireframes, and the visual design. Don't worry, I'll probably manage to do so in the next 10-15 minutes, so it won't be much longer. But I just want you to drive through the process so you understand what things do you really need to pay attention to and what the outcomes will be. Okay? So this is all about incremental disclosure. And incremental disclosure means that when we are aiming and we are doing a project, we try to do demos and we try to make releases of small stuff, so the small user flows. Okay? So if we do that and we build on top of it and on top of it and on top of it, the experience will get richer and richer and richer every time we do a demo. And sometimes we have big projects that we can run this process maybe 2-3 times. Sometimes we have projects that are smaller and this is only run once. And by the end of it, we get the gist of the most complex screens, and then we can extrapolate from those to get to the final um, project delivery. Okay, so and that's why the lifestyle guide is also important, because it's the end of all this research and this iteration with the users, and then we got this nice library, so you guys can pick it up and you develop, and it's already there with the sample pages and the patterns that you need to develop all the other pages that you'll probably need to develop. Right? So starting from the beginning, the business analysis. If you remember day one from the process that I've shown you, it's all about gathering information. Okay? So getting an idea of the goals, understanding the business, interviewing the stakeholders, not the users yet, but the stakeholders. These are the people that will provide you with information of what it's the business view of your project, at least the goal of your project. Review the current applications. If you can ask for a walkthrough if there is an application, or if there's no application, it's just a paper trail that you are going to digitize. Let's look at the forms, let's look at the files, and you run them through and you understand the process, so you can try to piece it up in your head, and then you can translate that into a digital experience. Okay? Figure out the different user profiles if you have them, if it's just one or two or three or more, and try to see the complexity level, if it changes, if it doesn't change. Identify what to ask to users. Okay? When you start talking with the stakeholders, you'll start to understand that there's some gaps in what they are saying and what you probably would expect the business to be. So if you don't get the answers from the stakeholders, you should fill in those gaps talking with users, but making them very straightforward questions like, oh, how do you guys do this? And why do you do that like this? Okay? And remember, you always have the excuse that you are not the experts in the business. So you can ask silly questions all the time. Whenever I'm going to a new client, I'm always saying that I'm the dumbest guy in the room regarding the business. So they feel quite comfortable talking with me, because they know that I may be an expert in UX, but I'm surely not an expert in their business. So I need to ask a lot of silly questions. Okay? But the biggest lesson is context is king. Okay? You really need to understand a little bit more about the process and the context. So don't learn the business with the users, learn it with the stakeholders. This is important. Create a context-rich environment, which is gather as much information as you can so you can build it on top of it, and then identify goals and constraints. Right? Let us meet the users. Okay? When we are talking about user research, basically we are talking about meeting with the people that will be our users. Okay? The guys that will interact with our solution day in, day out. And to do so, we don't need a complex 3-month approach to get all the questions and all the angles and all the possible approaches. Okay? What we need is to have at least an insight of the known unknowns, which means to have an insight of the things that we know that we don't know to begin with, but the surprises and the most meaningful stuff, usually it's the things that we had no clue that we didn't know. So what we call the unknown unknowns. Okay? So how to prep up? So you need to plan. Right? When you're meeting people, it's not a good idea to go there and just roll the dice and see what you get. No. At least have a script, okay, in your mind. Conversations may change a bit. It may drive you somewhere else, but at least take a script with you, okay? So those will be the goals that you really want to achieve with that conversation. Maybe there's a new issue that comes along. That's fine. Maybe there's a big surprise that you now see that, okay, scrap whatever I had prepared for this. This is my biggest concern right now. So if you plan, you have to identify the different user profiles, okay? Be aware that you at least should have 2 people of the same profile. Why? Because I could be in a really bad mood today, and this is not my usual mood, but today I'm not really happy, so I'm not the best user for you to interview, and probably my answers will not be the best. But my colleague here is having a normal day, and you see the gaps in between one and another, and that's fine. Or we have a company that has people with 20 years old guys and with 50 or 60, and probably the interactions which they have with the system and with the organization itself are different. So try to figure that out. Try to see how you can cope with that. But you don't need an army of users, okay? There's a really nice article in Norman Nielsen states that with just about 5 users, you can cover almost all the use cases that you can think about, okay? So dress appropriately. This may look silly. This may sound really strange, but do try to blend in, okay? The worst thing that you can do is to dress casual if you're going to a bank or an insurance company that's really dressing smart and you just dress casual. You kind of the alien in the room, okay? Even if you want to blend in, you can't because you're just all over the place. Everyone is looking at you. People will realize that you're there, okay? But don't take a committee, man. Don't take a large group of people just to interview someone, because if you think about it, would you like to have 3 or 4 people breathing on your neck and watching what you're doing in your desk? Probably not. Okay, so try to be discreet. Try to be very informal. Okay, introduce yourself. Tell them exactly what you're doing there, and to break a little bit the ice even faster, just bring someone that really trusts. Okay? It will help them be at ease. So what to do? So create rapport. Okay? So just be very open, very easygoing with them, create rapport, just interact with them, and hear about all the complaints, all the, the compliments that they have. Where do they spend their time? Is it just on mail? Is mail and Excel? It's on the phone and taking notes, and then they have to recall where they were in the system. Okay, be particularly and try to think about 3 things that they will really want you to fix, and 3 things that you cannot break. This is really, really important. If you have this in mind and you do it on your script, you already have information. If they don't complain about anything and they say that everything is all right, it's one type of information. If they complain immediately and they give you the top 3 or top 5 or top 6, you know that you probably have your hands full and you need to prioritize. So you need to gather information, organize it, and just build some priorities over it. Even when you gather all the information, you should do a session with your key stakeholder and you see, oh, you guys, we found this, this, and that. So which do you think it's the most the most critical ones? So the ones that we need to solve first. Okay. So wrapping up the user research, there's really, really nothing like watching current users and understand what the drives are. Okay, when you're looking at someone, interact with the system, trying to understand why they do things like they are doing, it's immediately. If you pick up if people are just doing that because the system only allows them to do this and they're really frustrated, or if it's a really intuitive way to do it, and when we build something new, we really need to be careful because we cannot break that experience because it's so easy for them. Right? So shadow IT is something that, in my experience, always shows up. It's, I would say that it will be the first customer that I'll go in the future if I don't find it a shadow IT. I'll be surprised because every single time it's either a notepad, a OneNote, a spreadsheet, another piece of system. It's always used to cope with the system that it's not catering for the needs. Right? So discover this, try to discover what the natural journey is for their work and trying to understand why they do it like that. Because if you tap into that, you'll probably get the best answers on how you should aim to provide the answers for the current system. Okay? So don't forget that something that is really cool is that you are not there to ask them what they need or what they want. Okay? You are there to understand what they need, which is something really different. So if you ask people what they want, they will give you very biased information, and it's not the most useful one. Okay? But if you understand by their complaints, the top three risks and the complaints and the compliments that they do and the positives and the negatives, you can understand what they really want and what they really need. And sometimes, like Henry Ford's quote, if at the time someone like Henry Ford would ask people what they really wanted, they said faster horses or most comfortable carriage. They would never think about a car, right? But what people like Henry Ford are really experts on doing is that they tap into that information from people and then translate it to something that it's really meaningful and could be innovative and could be disruptive. Like, okay, we have horses and now we have cars. And that was a breaking point. Okay? And this is all because he was listening to what people needed. Okay? But then he translated that into something that was a bit more different. And don't forget that people and things are always changing. So people change, times change, and new needs arise. If you were talking with someone 10 years ago, no one would have the need to use a tablet or a 6-inch mobile phone. And nowadays, man, if you don't have it, you're just an info excluded person, which is not good. Right? So probably almost everyone that you know have smartphone or tablet at home, and probably has more than one phone in their pockets. Okay, so this is a big transformation from 10 years ago to now, and these changes also happen in the enterprise world. Okay, because people nowadays are a bit more demanding, and they have the gap in between what the enterprise needs to achieve with what the consumer world achieves. It's going narrow and narrow and narrow. So a few years ago, you could see a gap of 5, 10, 15 years. Nowadays, if you have a gap of 6 months to 18 months, it's already too much. Okay, so people adapt, but the pain may be there. Okay, the pain point that they need to report may be there. You just need to tap into that. So fail fast or fail loudly. When you're doing wireframes, that's the way to go. Okay, you need to start showing stuff early and fast, so you don't have to wait to have a bigger, complex system, and then you probably don't get everything right, so you have to redo everything, and it's more costly, and it's a big investment. So when we are talking about wireframes, my advice to you is go, 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 go. Okay? Go as fast as you can and try to sink in as fast as you can with the same wavelength of the users and the business. So if you can expose your ideas early on, you'll start immediately to see if you are going in the right direction or not. So my advice is don't wait until the curve hits the car, drive the car, and see where the curves lead you. Okay? So it can be as simple as just some sketches on the whiteboard, some pen and paper, just really rough designs, so people could understand what you are trying to say. Because don't forget, and again, words are more abstract than drawings, than images. So pictures are a lot more powerful than words. So if you do that and you understand the information and the information structure that you have in your system, you will start to design the navigation and the first bits and the structure and the bare bones of your system. And that will give a little bit more comfort to users. And by the way, because there's a lot of confusion out there, wireframes are these things. Okay, they are then black, white, and gray for a reason, because we don't want compromises on color, because when you get color, you forget about the functionality. Everyone then sees that that's not the right shade of blue or the right shade of red because my brand is orange. I like orange on my system. And those are the kind of conversations that you just don't want to have in this stage. This stage, it's all about functionality and structure. Okay? This is what we are trying to solve with the wireframes. And only then, when we finish this discussion, then we can go to the other discussion of the brand and the look and feel. So basically here at OutSystems, what we use is we use Balsamiq to do our wireframes, and we set them up in InVision to provide a more interactive prototype kind of experience to the users and to the stakeholders, to provide them how some interactions will happen, how some transitions within the page or from page to page will happen, how the look will be in the desktop, how the look will be in the mobile, so to kind of drive them through these sets of things. But this is what we use. These are just tools, okay? You guys can use all the tools that you want, okay? So you can use Sketch, you can use Illustrator, you can use whatever you want, as long as you are able to show those outcomes with to the stakeholders, okay? That's really important. Okay? And please do not compromise on color in this stage. So wireframes are really powerful as a change management tool, so use it, okay? Especially when you are early on in the project, it's the right key and the right tool to defeat the unknown, okay? So it makes a lot easier for you to manage change with this than with code, because this is really easy and easier and cheaper to do than then rebuild everything that you have done already in code. So wireframes are a way to spend less time and money and having a more informed and useful output. And last but not least, we have to make it awesome. We have to make all those structures and functionalities and bare bones into something that has the look and feel of your client. So then you have the visual design. And this is the high fidelity design. Okay? Sometimes I get some confusions and some people talking about front end. This shouldn't be front end. This should be only design. And especially because nowadays you have tools like AvoCode that can translate this and take the CSS and the HTML5 out of the structure of the design, so you can get it. So you don't have to think about it. Okay? So visual design is the cherry on top of the cake. Okay? This is really what makes a difference. And believe me, in almost every single client that we have and that we had some engagements with, the visual design, after all the work of the functionality and the UX side, and the piece that allowed us to land the deal was the final piece. Okay? So we have all the experience, all the stuff taken care of, and then on top of that, we add the visual design, and then helps to sell the system to the users and to the stakeholders. All right? So this makes the relationship, the emotional connection in between the users and the system a lot easier. They will relate to the experience they will have in the end. So this is the piece of information that you can provide early on without any code that will at least give some confidence to those users and to those stakeholders that what they will get in the end, it will be that kind of experience. Even that if at the end of the first sprint, you can only provide a structure and the navigation, they will start gaining form. So, but they already know what the end product will look like. This will be a nice way to deal with that. So, as I said, lifestyle guide, I want to talk about it because you have a cool webinar by Daniel Reis. I think it was 2 weeks ago that Daniel did a brilliant presentation on how you should build a lifestyle guide and what the lifestyle guide is all about. So please do check it if you have any doubts about it, or if you really want to know a little bit more about the lifestyle guide. What I can tell you is that within our services offering, it is probably 90% of the times we do not finish a work within UX and UI that has not a lifestyle guide at the end. So we will always try to do this library at the end, so we can have that as a starting block that will make the early stages of development go much quicker and much structured than if we didn't have the lifestyle guide. Okay? And then the go live. Okay? Keep it real. Do not forget that the fight is not over. Okay? So the battle keeps on, and you have to keep iterating and iterating, and trying to get the structure, trying to get consistency throughout your product. And this is a framework, so this is something that it's living. It's an ongoing cycle. Okay, so don't forget, this ain't over until the Fed user sings. It's only then that you can relax, and if everything went well, then it's done. You've given the key to the stakeholder, the client is happy, done deal. Okay? So stay close to the users and react fast, especially in the early stages of the deployment. It will allow you to get a momentum with them and to engage with the users. Okay? So finally, last but not least, how can we avoid all the UX traps out there? So probably if we are able to provide you with stuff and cool stuff like this, so this is our giveaway moment, so prepare yourselves. We have a lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff to give you, all available online, either in our site, in our community. All the links will be in the presentation. This one is the developers UX checklist. We've released this, I think, 2 months ago or a month ago. You can have the full article by Gonçalo Veiga, which is one of our colleagues here at the Expert Services, um, uh, explaining basically the advantage of the checklist. And basically it's a really simple, clean, but very, very powerful checklist. So you can pick it up and immediately, just by doing this assessment. And I have a challenge for you guys. Let's see who is brave enough to do it. And I will be giving myself a little bit more trouble and more work, but it's something that I will see, and I want to see what's your reaction. My challenge is download the checklist and try to use it in your current project. And let me know your feedback. Okay? Let us know your feedback about this one. If you gain some cool information or not, and even the most obvious things that are there, were you surprised with the results or not? Okay? So the challenge is download the checklist and give your feedback. Let us know if this is something that it's useful or not, and if you were surprised with the results when you apply the checklist. Okay? I'll be waiting for the feedback. So we have another checklist. This is one of our classics. It's an older one. It's 11 usability rules for IT developers, but still it's very up to date. It didn't got outdated at all, and it's a really, really nice piece of driving tool for you that are probably not aware of all the design principles, all the design techniques. This is a very cool way for developers to be aware of some of the most basic principles and on a checklist. Okay? So we have some stuff that it's close to seeing the light of day. So forms that work, design principles. We even have some, for you guys that use Balsamiq or that will be using Balsamiq in the future, we have some stencils with all our themes from our framework, Silk UI. So you guys can have all the elements, all the sample pages that we've got, and that's cool. And I think that connected with the lifestyle guide as well, you can actually go to our Dribble account now and get the sketch files for that specific style guide that you guys saw that Danielle was working on. And so be aware, stay sharp. We will have these goodies coming out really soon. Some of them probably already this month, some of them later on, but stay tuned because there's a lot of stuff coming up in the next few days. So not just from our team, but from all the other teams and the expert services. So you'll get a lot of tools for you to work a little bit more with that. And as food for thought and our last slide, you have a lot of books out there. It's very easy for you to get all sorts of UX references and books. This is my personal, and I think probably 80% of them all the team agrees on. And it's a cool way for you to see, especially if you feel that you are alone doing UX in your company. I really advise you on the UX team of one and the undercover user experience design. So these two are for you lonely wolves out there that are trying to implement UX in your organizations. Do give a read at these cool experiences. It's they are all about doing guerrilla UX work, how to achieve that on your own, and how to get that translated to rapport with the other people and to see that turning out to be a big advantage for your company. So, guys, thank you so much to bear with me for the last 70 minutes. We'll do a 5-minute short break, and I look forward for your questions. So feel free to still fitting in the questions over the chat, and we'll see you again in 5 minutes. Thank you.